Good day, everyone. Richard Cowperthwait for Northwest Access TV. Thanks for joining us. We're talking Highgate issues today, taping this show on Monday, January 8th, getting a taste of winter for a change in the last day or two. Happy to have two guests on the set, Sharon Bosquet, the Highgate Town Administrator, and a first-time guest here with us, Cindy Reid with Cathedral Square, the Director of Real Estate Development for Cathedral Square. It's nice to see you folks. Thanks for braving a touch of winter weather for a change. So Sharon, again, I know it's hard for you to fill your day, just not much stuff going on in Highgate these days. I guess I probably always start off that day that way, but a lot of stuff going on. And nice to have Cindy with us. Again, we mentioned as part of the Village Core project, you've talked last time we got together, you mentioned there might be a housing component to that, and I guess we'll give that issue plenty of attention.
So yes, I brought Cindy along with me today. She and I have hopefully formed a collaboration. So the town of Highgate is wishing to put in some affordable senior housing. And Cathedral Square is an outfit that has an excellent reputation. They have well-managed buildings, and they fit our needs and our wants perfectly. So we're very, very happy to have been working with Cindy and her group.
That's right. Did you go after them, or did they come after you, or how did that collaboration start?
We had taken a bunch of charrettes, so a bunch of public meetings, and asked the residents what they wanted for our village core development. And one of the things that most everyone wanted was senior housing, and they wanted it to be affordable. In Highgate, there's no option for senior housing.
You don't have, there's nothing.
There's nothing. If someone wants to move close by, they have to come either to St. Albans, Enosburg, Richford, and there's a little bit in Swanton. But some of the ones in St. Albans, I've heard have up to a 5-year wait. So we don't want our families to have to move away. We'd like our people to stay in the village, close to their families, close to their friends, in our community setting. So we reached out to Cathedral Square to see if they would be interested in being our partner, and we were blessed to have found Cindy. So
interesting. Cindy, give us some background. I think some folks out there may be at least vaguely familiar with Cathedral Square. You're certainly in the news, but tell us about Cathedral Square.
So Cathedral Square is a nonprofit housing and services provider for older adults. We were formed about 45 years ago. We serve Chittenden, Franklin, and Grand Isle counties. We have one other property right now in Franklin County, and we're developing one in St. Albans. We have over 1,000 apartments in our portfolio.
Wow.
We're serving about 1,300 folks. We also, so we develop and own and manage housing, and we also provide services. And we designed a program called SASH, Support and Services at Home, about 11 years ago, and we now offer that program statewide through many housing and service partners. And SASH provides embedded services within affordable housing and somewhat in the communities for Medicare-eligible older adults. And it's a really wonderful program that helps people age safely at home. It's very preventive.
Define senior. When you mention senior, define senior. What's the senior with you folks?
Right, so typically 55 and up.
55 and up.
In some cases where we have HUD involvement, it's 62 and up. So it depends on funding.
Yeah.
And many of our residents, we serve up to, forever, up to 100, years old or older.
But nothing under 55. You're just doing.
We have a few communities that serve younger adults with in partnership with other nonprofits, but here in Highgate, we're looking at a 55 and up community. Okay. And when I got Sharon's email, I thought, here's another community saying we need senior housing in our community because most communities need and want that.
Really?
But then I met Sharon and heard about the Village Core Committee and their vision and all the work they've done to try to create a strong village community, to try to serve seniors in their community.
That sounds like that was that really caught your attention, huh?
Absolutely, because for us, housing is also community development. They're looking at a library with a big community space for congregating people in town. And it's really about human connection and the social fabric and keeping that strong. And rural communities are struggling right now to keep people housed, to have good jobs in the town, to keep them vibrant, to keep their general stores and libraries. So we're really thrilled that Highgate contacted us and had done so much legwork. And we're looking at a potential 30-unit building.
Well,
We've procured the services of Gossens Bachman Architects, which have been involved integrally in the village planning process and the library design. So it's a nice seamless design team that we're working with. So we're excited to explore in Highgate. The other interesting thing is that not only are there no housing options in Highgate for older adults, which means many people have to leave their home, which is very traumatic at a time when you want to be close to family and need them more than ever. There's also a lack of primary care in that area, which is true of many rural communities. And one of the things that the SASH program offers is telehealth on site. So with our wellness nurse and SASH coordinator, even though it is independent living, we always design a telehealth room, and so that we can connect people to their primary care. And during COVID, this really took off because many people were not getting primary care because they were afraid or it wasn't safe to go. And in some cases, we save lives through the telehealth program.
Yeah.
And so that seems like a really critical component, particularly at Highgate where there's such a distance to get to primary care providers.
you do have a Notch presence in neighboring Swanton, and
Yes.
Notch has certainly had a huge role up here with its health clinics, dental, medical, and stuff, but nothing in Highgate itself.
Right.
Well, speaking of housing, of course, a very different housing thing, but Franklin has certainly done pretty well. Not your typical small Vermontan with its
Right.
homestead project.
Absolutely.
Hugh Gates, an old friend of mine, key person getting that going years ago.
Yep.
They just had a big anniversary for homestead in there. That
Yeah.
sounds like they've done well, but that's pretty unusual initiative for a small town to pull off something like that.
Very unusual and very much trailblazers up in
Sounds like it.
Franklin. And it's not impossible, but it really takes visionary leadership, and it takes people building relationships. And Sharon's done phenomenal work in Highgate and has wonderful committee members and select board, and it really takes that commitment to get the resources pulled together to serve communities. And some might say it's harder than ever with this high-cost environment, labor shortage. But it really takes that local commitment, which it's not in every community, unfortunately.
I should note, again, we're taping this show on Monday, January 8th. I believe there's a village core meeting this Wednesday, January 10th.
There is.
To be honest, we're taping this show. I'm not even sure when this show will air, but in case it airs before then, village core meeting. And what time is that Wednesday meeting, Sharon?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock?
Yes.
And where's that?
It's a municipal building, so
Okay.
in the back of the municipal building, we have a small community room that we take and use all of our meetings for.
Right. So give us, maybe get back, we haven't talked for a while, the village core. Of course, you had the vote, I guess last summer, as we're now in a new year here with a very
Yes.
close approval for buying, setting up, or trying to get a wastewater system going in the village core area.
Yes, well, and that's one thing I would like to point out, that
Yeah.
if we don't go forward with the village wastewater program,
Yeah.
senior housing will not be developed in Highgate.
So that's simple. So without that.
It's
yeah.
that simple.
Huh.
They need to have a wastewater plan. The other development that we'd like to see on that property needs that wastewater plan.
The other development being the potential new library or something else?
Potential new
Community
library, potential new commercial development. This 30 to 32 apartments that Cindy is talking about is only a portion of what will happen on that property in the future.
And how big's that property? What are we talking for acres?
2.5 acres.
2.5 acres.
So we have updated our zoning bylaws to allow us to go to quarter-acre lots in the village center. We've changed our bylaws to have minimal parking so that this development could have one parking space per apartment instead of our formerly required 2.
And that should be plenty of housing for folks, seniors and stuff?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
So,
those changes have already been made?
correct.
Yeah.
So our zoning is on track for that. We just need to make sure that our wastewater keeps on track, because frankly, this is a huge opportunity for Highgate. This isn't by any means a freebie for those taxpayers that are listening. Cathedral Square will pay for the property, and they pay taxes. So for this particular property, which now is out of the tax rolls because the town owns it, it's a win-win. And it takes care of our residents. It fits a need. The Northwest Regional Planning did a housing assessment study. There is a huge need for senior housing.
But
Like I said earlier, there are places in St. Albans that have a 5-year waiting list.
really,
People can't wait that long. And not only does this take care of our people, it also frees up housing in our town. So if you have a younger family and you have an older person in a huge house that they can no longer want to or can care for, but they want to stay in their community, their families are here, they have the option of moving to something like this, and then their home could be sold, and a new family could move in.
and Highgate is showing some growth. It is a growing town.
Yes,
Not every place in Vermont can make that claim, obviously.
exactly.
And again, we'll talk probably about the airport project later, but down the road, we could be talking hopefully some pretty decent jobs not far away from,
Right.
in or near Highgate.
Right, so we will need to have some housing, and that would free up some housing in town.
Yeah.
It just all works toward a similar goal. You know, we renewed our town plan this year, and these goals all work toward that end, to try to keep, a slow, manageable growth, get more commercial property involved so that we have a little more equitable tax base for our residents. We don't want to overburden our taxpayers.
Yeah.
The state is doing a fine job of that by themselves. But things are more expensive. And we know that, a lot of our older residents can't take that burden. We understand that. Most of the boards feel bad about that. They don't want to make life harder for people in our town. We want it to make it easier, better. Quality of life is very important for Highgate.
So I guess the key question, again, you got that vote, positive vote last summer, albeit a
Yes.
very close vote, but positive vote. So what needs to be done? Have you still got X number of hurdles to pull all this off, or what are the key factors here?
So key factors are our engineer is working on the final designs for the project. We had gone from our partial project design to going to a full design at the state's concern that why not do it now, because there's funding available for it now. So if we got our permits and our project in a full design, that's one less thing we'd have to do in the future.
Yeah.
So we did close on the property, so it's 18 and a half acres. That'll be our waste disposal site.
Yeah.
So that is on track. We have had some commercial and public interest in joining on to this septic system. Plus, we have certain gallons per day that's set aside for the village core property, including the senior housing.
So you've got enough land for the
Yes.
big leach field, whatever, will take care of everything you hope to get in the village core?
Yes.
Um,
We're pulling our funding together. We've had a grant for $1.4 million from the state ARPA fund to go toward this. We've had Clean Water State Revolving Fund that's $2.5 million that's set aside for possible funding. So we're hoping that we can go to our voters, ask for a positive vote for construction once we're all ready, once all of our permits are in place, once we have all these things in place. And one of the big pieces was Cathedral Square. So that people know that this isn't just a project that we're doing for no reason. This project is actually going to put a property back on the tax rolls. It's going to give them some income right off with the sale of the property. So we actually have a large piece that's already in the process, ready to go for this wastewater. So that's our next hurdle, is to get a positive bond vote, or positive vote for construction.
Are we talking, again, town meeting day now, about two months away here, a little under 2 months?
We are hoping to have it for town meeting day.
Really?
We'll also have it, the land sale will also be on the ballot.
Wow.
So it's.
So we're talking March 5th this year.
So we're scrambling right now as a committee to get as much clear, transparent information out to our public, to tell them exactly what's going on, exactly how much it'll cost, exactly what the ramifications are, and what it will look like after. People get nervous when you talk housing. They think, oh, it's going to be
More kids into the school system, of course.
Right.
That comes right to mind, which I guess will not be a factor with this,
right.
presumably.
This is perfect. Buildings are well managed. They're neat. They're positive. One of the best things I like about Cathedral Square is that an older person can take their pet with them.
Oh, really?
And it's one of the only ones, I think, in the state that allow for a pet.
Is that right, Cindy? That's unusual for a
I-
project like this to allow pets?
I don't know how widespread pet approval is, but I think we are unique.
Oh, really?
Definitely takes more custodial attention in some cases, but
Huh.
the pets are really important for people's mental health and
Interesting.
companionship.
Absolutely.
Are we talking all, sorry, maybe you mentioned this, all one-bedroom apartments for,
Right now, we're thinking 26 one-bedrooms and 4 two-bedrooms.
and 4
That's
twos?
roughly what we're conceptualizing.
Interesting. Wow, so this is, got a big vote not far away here, huh?
We're going to try to cross our fingers.
Yeah.
And I think the big issue will be if we can get the information out to the voters.
Yeah. Yeah, always a big issue. I know, again, going back to the vote last summer, 44-39, I mean, a very tight,
It was a very
close
tight
vote.
Yeah, we learned from that vote that we really need to get as much information out there as possible.
Yeah.
People had some information, they didn't feel like they had enough, they didn't understand what they were voting on, they were unclear, where there was some non-factual information that was being put out there.
And I know you said, I'm a library guy, I'm not a Highgate resident, I'm St. Albans City resident, but there was definitely some strong vocal opposition to the
Yes.
project just for people who didn't think the town needs a big new library, community center. So that issue was there. Do you
Yeah.
think for those folks, the Cathedral Square component may help you with some of the earlier opponents, or who knows?
I do believe that.
You obviously hope so, huh?
Yes. We've had some that have already changed their mind that
Yeah.
if this project includes senior housing,
Huh.
then they're for it.
Interesting.
They want senior housing in a big way. They want to be able to have a place to go.
Right. Well, it sounds like that component is maybe a huge help for you in trying to get a positive vote.
Yes. Yeah. And we think that we couldn't have formed a better partnership. That, we're willing to go above and beyond for Cathedral Square, and they've already shown us that they are willing to do the same for Highgate. And that's pretty impressive in this day and age, that you have a good partner that wants good things to happen for your town.
Right. So again, the proposed new, much bigger library community center, is that as much a part of this as Cathedral Square, or are they And other aspects of the project, are these all kind of nailed together here, or?
So what we are, now that we have Cathedral Square developing as a partner and figuring out what we need and what we need to give them and what they need from us, the next piece, of course, is wastewater first.
Yeah.
Once we can get the wastewater system, then senior housing, and then the community center and library is our somewhat timeline of development. We think the library and community center is a perfect match to the senior housing.
Yeah.
Part of some of the information that Cindy had given us earlier included like having gardening plots as well as senior housing and outdoor spaces and places to gather. And that's perfect because that's exactly what we want with our community center and library.
Yeah.
We want those things together. We want to engage all of these people in community events. We want, to give them crafts. We want to give them opportunities. We understand that Highgate's not St. Albans. We know it's not Burlington, but we still have a lot to offer. And we think that the community members themselves and the programming that we run will make up for any loss of maybe shopping you could do or other things. We think that the close proximity to the elementary school, to the rail trail, to the rec center, to the library and community center, all goes toward making a better quality of life for a senior.
So do you just need one positive vote, or would there need to be other votes down the road, or is this the one key positive vote you need for this project to move ahead?
Well, it would actually be two. It would be the sale of the property
Okay.
to Cathedral Square, and it would be the village wastewater. So Cathedral Square requires that wastewater to go forward,
Right.
which only makes sense. We need it anyway because of village residents, village development, and if our commercial lots are looking to do some development as well, this is the time. This is the perfect time. I understand that people get nervous when we talk big figures. And when the state, the governor worries about affordability and things like that, we get it. People are nervous. But we're trying to do this so that as much as possible is grant funded. We're trying to get as much bang for our buck as we can. We understand budgets are tight. Our budget is tight as well. We have a lot of things going on right now, but Cathedral Square and affordable senior housing in Highgate is something that we need, something that we want, and something that would be a huge benefit to our town.
At last year's town meeting, which usually it's a Highgate meetings, meeting I had, of course, in St. Albans City, I'm just voting. Don't have the luxury of hearing people debate issues. But again, the Australian ballot issue came up last year. Maybe it had come up before and voted. I guess they put that off when it was tabled, I guess.
Yes.
So then there'll be a vote at this town meeting, but that's obviously affecting just future town meetings.
Correct.
So this key vote on March 5th, town meeting day in Highgate, whoever shows up, we're not talking
Yes.
an Australian ballot issue, we're talking whoever shows up for town meeting.
Yeah.
Well, one might think that would get you a pretty decent turnout. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we're hoping that people can see a little bit of the future and are willing to say, okay, we can pull this off. We can do this.
Yeah, and you'll have obviously the opportunity to talk about this.
Yes.
So, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of talk at town meeting about this.
Yes.
So you're pretty much positive you can get this on the town meeting warning, Sharon? And it looks like You're
Yes,
pretty sure about
we'll
this.
be discussing it on Wednesday night to make sure everybody's on board and what a timeline looks like for putting information out there as quickly as possible and getting voters educated as to what this looks like.
Talk about the wastewater. So we're not talking about any big wastewater plant, but talk about that in a little bit.
No, our wastewater treatment actually is a giant leach field. And
18 and a half acres, is that what the property is?
18 and a half acres, so that allows for the original system plus a backup system, which will be up to 30,000 gallons per day. And what it does is it's not a sewer system, it's a, for lack of better terms, sewer water system. So the water, the effluent water that's produced in your septic tank would flow out into these pipes, get pumped to this property, and it would be dispersed into the ground. And that ground has roughly 25 feet of sand right there. So 18 inches below the ground level, you'll have piping in there that disperses all that into the ground. And then
And it doesn't go further. Of course, the Mississippi River not far away. It's not like effluent, some of this eventually gets into the river. No, that doesn't happen.
No, the state's very, very particular about these things. There's a huge permitting process that needs to be gone through. Testing is numerous and sometimes over the top, but yes, this is very closely watched by the state. There'll be no well water or spring water that's affected. The river won't be affected. This happens to be the perfect site and perfect soils for this type of project.
Interesting. And some area houses would be able to, if they want to, hook into this?
Yes, and most of the state says 40 to 50 years on a current septic tank for a lifespan. If you look at our village, most of our properties are past that age. So they're at a point where their septic systems may already be in the process of failing or have failed. And some of these lots are small enough where you don't have the room to put in a replacement system. Or if you do, it's extremely expensive. And that's all regulated by the state. So if you can't replace your system and your system has failed, what do? For this, you'd have the opportunity to hook onto this system. So for a fee, you'd be able to hook onto the system and take care of part of that problem for your waste.
You've heard from some homeowners who would like to do this if this happens?
Yes. Yeah, and we're trying to educate people as well about what it means to have a failed system, what it looks like, what it acts like, so that they know that, okay, maybe my system is not right. But to give them an opportunity to be able to hook onto this at the same time.
And the time frame, so how many years would you get out of this system if you pull this off?
It depends on the development. So it depends on how much gets hooked up immediately. We're going to say roughly 40 to 50 years. Based on what we think we'll get for usage. But it'll all depend. We may get more usage than we're expecting, but for now, what we know, we should get 40 to 50 years out of it.
So key components, obviously, Cathedral Square, the housing, the new library community center, other components to this. Ideally, would you love to see a restaurant, some retail, or is that?
Yes, we'd love to see a restaurant, cafe, outdoor seating.
Be great.
Snack bar, maybe. We'd love to be able to go into a long-term lease with the post office. Our post office is severely undersized. The staff is rather squashed in there.
Right. It is a real small post office.
Yeah, so they would like a new post office.
Wow, that's a great thought.
So there is that possibility. We have not found the correct individual that has that authority yet, but we're still looking. And maybe there is, well, there's plenty of room for maybe a small shop or maybe a bike repair shop or maybe, a touristy shop or hairdresser or dentist.
And as you say, the rail trail, of course, goes
Yes.
right by.
Yeah.
In fact, I guess we can report, I guess it was in the news just days ago after the flooding. And of course, the governor was going to come up here with Senator Sanders to inaugurate the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail last summer from the Swanton end when, of
Yeah.
course, flooding hit a couple of days before, so put that off. But I guess they had talked about, well, we'll get it finished by next summer, but I guess they were well ahead of schedule, so I guess
Yeah.
now LVRT is in good shape again.
Yeah, they were putting the last bridge up, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting. Cindy, can you folks, I realize that housing's your issue, but in terms of getting maybe some retail, other developments, can you help out on that front at all, or are you just focused on your housing?
We really focus on the housing, that's
Sure.
what we do, but we, for example, in South Hero, we recently completed a senior housing community there, right next to the library, right next to the community health
Wow.
center, and there's a small cafe there. So those were already pre-existing, but
Yeah.
it was the right place for senior housing.
Yeah.
So there are benefits of co-location, and hopefully we could help be a draw for the uses
Yes.
that Sharon's talking
Right.
about. But we wouldn't necessarily be, doing anything specifically with them.
Right.
But I think incenting, the more positive development you have, incents more investment.
Right. Tell me about St. Albans. Have you got something going now, or is this
We do, yeah. We have a 33-unit building called Reed Commons, and it's going to start construction in June.
This is on the old
May.
Fonda Solo site?
On the old Fonda site,
Yes,
a
I live pretty
brownfield.
close to that.
So we're very excited about that. It's just a tremendous need. Sharon had cited earlier in the conversation, the Northwest Regional Planning Commission did a housing needs assessment last 2022 and determined that there's, in the two-county area, Franklin, Grinnell counties, over 3,000 housing units are needed.
Wow.
And 1,600 of that number is specifically needed for seniors and
So
people
just
with
about half
disabilities.
of that.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I'm almost afraid to ask. Statewide, have you got the figure on?
I don't have the figure off the top of my
I hate,
head,
obviously,
but-
tens of thousands of units.
Yes.
Ideally, would be needed.
yes, and what we have determined is about 4,000 age-specific units are needed in the state over the next 10 years. And so we know there's a huge need, and everyone's talking about it as a housing crisis, but it has very deep roots. It didn't just happen overnight.
Yeah.
A lot of things were in place to get us to this point, and now we're finding ourselves way behind. We've got to build more housing,
Yeah.
and we've got to build appropriate housing. And multifamily housing is better for climate change than a bunch of single-family homes. It uses less energy. So we're mindful of climate change and how we can be doing better with the built environment to address energy efficiency and resource protection. So in the St. Albans project, we're actually looking at geothermal heating and cooling, because our properties have cooling, which is an important component for older adults and people with compromised health conditions. So that needs energy, and so we're looking at more efficient ways to deliver that energy. So we're excited about this location next to the rail trail and the recreation path, next to the future library.
Highgate Arena, of course, in the neighborhood as well.
Yeah, the arena, the elementary school. I mean, there's just so many wonderful connections that can happen. And the other thing about keeping seniors in their community where they already live is when people start moving out, you lose that history, you lose that experience. I mean, you already know this, but you lose potential volunteers who have the roots in that community, and it's just a huge loss for a community as well as for those individuals that have to leave their community because there's no decent housing there or appropriate housing. So we see people in their older years, retirement, they're volunteering in the town, they're going to the library, they're going to the school, they're an integral part of the community. So it's a really important aspect of keeping seniors in their communities. And as Sharon mentioned, when a senior moves into an apartment building, their home gets freed up
Sure.
for another family. So it's a nice, it's a good cycle.
And again, this project would be just for Highgate residents? Can you restrict it to Highgate residents?
No, we
You
can't because of fair housing. But what we do is we market heavily in the area where we're building, and we develop as many connections as possible so that all those folks know about it and know the timing and know when to apply.
Yeah.
It's open to anyone who's income eligible, and there's
Okay.
a range of incomes to be eligible, but we deeply target because our goal is to serve as many local folks as possible, but we can't
Interesting.
restrict.
So again, 30 units. So what's the key is it folks with the least income? Are they going to be in the best shape to get one of the units? Or how's the pecking order work on this? You have
Right.
100 people applying. Who are the 30 or 60 people who get this?
So it's, the application process is very specific
Yeah.
for fairness, and every application is date and time stamped. And then we have maybe like 3 or 4 different buckets of apartment types. We might get some subsidy, a subsidy for some of the units. It's
But we're
harder
not
to
talking
get.
Section 8 here or anything?
There
or
might
are
be
we?
some Section 8, but
Okay.
a few. It's hard to get very many. So
Yeah.
that can help serve the lowest income.
Yeah.
And then we serve another bucket, which is up to 50% of median income.
Oh.
I didn't bring those income levels, but I can
Okay.
get back to you. And then up to 60%, and then up to 80% of median income. So it serves a nice range from very low income to close to moderate income. So we always try to create mixed income communities. It works very well for a variety of reasons. And in so doing, we best serve the community, of which there are a variety of incomes, but everyone's on a fixed income.
Right.
Because they're mostly no longer working, although some people are working longer,
Yeah.
because they have to or they want to, some
Right.
combination.
But presumably it would be folks around here. I wouldn't think you're going to get applications, I wouldn't think, from folks outside even of Franklin County, or not many.
Well,
But you tell me, am I wrong about that?
Yeah, in some cases, it can be up to, market studies will say 10 to 15%
Yeah.
of people out of the market
Oh,
area.
really?
And they're primarily coming to live next to their adult children.
Okay. If they
So
have
that's typically
family
like,
here or
they might be
something?
coming out of state.
Interesting.
Or from southern Vermont or somewhere else to live near their adult children, be
Right.
part of their grandchildren's lives. That happens, and
Right.
I don't know what percentage, it could be 10, 15%. In our South Hero property, over half that was 30 units, over half was South Hero or from the islands
Right.
folks, because we did a lot of targeted marketing there.
Yeah. Sharon, obviously your hope would be a bunch of Highgate residents would be getting these units, folks around here.
Sure, sure,
Obviously.
absolutely. But we also know that we have a very tight community and we have lots of volunteer opportunities, so we're not afraid to have outside residents as well. If it makes them happy and it makes us happy,
Yeah.
we're delighted.
But I'm sure you're already hearing with this news from some of the older residents in town who would be very interested in this if it happens.
Yes, and not only the older residents, but the adult children who are saying, oh, my mom would have stayed here
Wow.
instead of moving to
Wow.
the Carolinas if she could have found housing. Or, my dad would have really loved it here, but he's since passed away. So not only the possible residents themselves, but families are saying, this would be nice to have. We'd like to keep them in our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren's lives.
Right.
That's kind of gone by the wayside as this life has developed, that, it's no longer Sunday dinners at mom and dad's or grandma and grandpa's. We've kind of lost that connection, and this is one way to help preserve the connection that's still there.
Right. How would you, your housing with 30 units, how many applications do you think you would get for this? Have you got a feel for that,
Oh,
Cindy?
gosh, probably a couple hundred.
A couple hundred?
Yeah.
And then there's obviously, for folks who don't get in, obviously a waiting list.
It's a wait list, yep.
Yeah.
So in South Hero, I keep talking about that because that's our most recently completed community, and it's the same number of
No,
units.
that was big news. I certainly read about it.
Yeah, big news.
Yeah.
I don't remember how many applicants we got, but we have over 120 people on the wait list.
Wow.
And it can be really daunting, but what we tell people is apply now. You can't apply now for Highgate because that's
I was
just
going
a
to say,
concept.
you can't apply quite yet for Highgate.
No, you can't apply now, but we let you know when you can apply, but apply now to Cathedral Square because it
Sure.
can take a long time, and we have a number of wonderful communities. We have 27 different communities. So
Really?
if you
Wow.
or your loved one needs housing, don't
Yeah.
wait. Don't say, oh, it takes years, I'm not going to do it. You got to start now and get on that wait list. So
Yeah.
that's not for this project, as I said, for anyone's watching and wondering.
Right.
But all you can do is apply.
All right.
That's
Talk
important.
rents. What are we talking for rents? Will there be a range of what people are paying?
There'll be a range of rents. I'm not prepared to talk about the levels yet, but
Yeah.
they're always below market.
Yeah.
And our rents include all utilities and SASH services and laundry.
Wow.
So it's a really
And
good.
all utilities.
And all utilities,
Okay.
yeah. So it's a really affordable approach, and then everything's included, and that's what you pay, and then, what we know now is that 18% of people over 60 now are renting in the state, and half of them are cost burdened. Half of
Huh.
them are paying more than
Interesting.
30% of their income on
Wow.
rent or housing costs, and I mean, everyone knows someone or many someones who are cost burdened in their apartments or their homes. And it's just not a good place to be when you're an older adult and you need medicine, you need food, and you're worried about rent or heat. So
Right.
we're troubled about this, and we want to continue to make a positive impact on people's quality of life and affordability.
Can you tell me what's an average rent? I mean, I'm hearing, I've got a friend now desperately looking for an apartment in St. Albans and getting nowhere. It just seems like such an incredibly tight market. Can you give me
Yeah.
an average rent figure for a one-bedroom apartment here in the St. Albans area? Is that a figure on
St.
your
Albans,
mind?
You mean market rate?
Yeah, market rate.
I would think market rate could be anywhere from 1,300 to 2,000 for a one-bedroom
That's about
apartment.
what I was,
Yeah. And typically,
Oh.
our one-bedroom non-market, non-tax credit unit is a little under 1,000.
yeah.
So
Oh.
they have been creeping up because we got to pay our insurance, our taxes, our utilities, our
Yeah.
maintenance. All of our staff have benefits, they have health care. So that's reflected in the rents. But ours are below market, and I think that will continue, that gap will continue to grow as
Yeah.
market rates just continue to skyrocket, and people cannot afford them.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like the least of your problem, obviously, is going to be not having enough people apply. It sounds like you get always plenty of applications.
Absolutely.
And not only is it, your rent, your heat, your utilities, you can have a pet. These are locked, secured buildings. So there's some security involved in this process for those that are nervous. There are community rooms, lounge areas, there's a public kitchen. So it's a place to socialize as well, not only just to live, but to socialize and have a good quality of life.
Just made me think of something, we're not going to have too much time for side issues, but police coverage comes to mind as we're talking safety. Of course, St. Albans City PD will be ending its time in Highgate on June 30th.
Yes.
And of course, huge issue in Swanton right now. But any thoughts right now, what happens July 1st for police coverage in Highgate?
So the select board has chosen to go with a contract that's been proposed by the Franklin County Sheriff's Department. We have faith that no matter what happens with Mr. Grismore, that there are good, decent officers in the Franklin County
Yeah.
Sheriff's Department that we're willing to bet on.
Yeah, the department's not going away regardless of what
Absolutely.
happens with the sheriff,
Right.
obviously.
So yes,
Huh.
we want to offer additional services. So we're looking at going to a 40-hour-a-week contract,
Huh.
which is much more than we're currently getting, about 5 to 8 hours a week.
No, that's all. And that's
Right.
not, I mean, and that was cut down by St. Albans City.
Yes.
You contracted for more hours than that.
We did,
And
and
they
they
just can't do it.
Yeah. So,
Huh.
yeah, we're hoping that we'll have better coverage, that we'll have a stake in the game with the Franklin County Sheriff's Department, that we'll support them, and hopefully they'll support our town and community, and hopefully we can have a great relationship between the two of us and provide the coverage that Highgate really needs.
How long a contract are we talking?
They are right now, I think, looking at a 1 to 3 year contract. I think that we're going to go with the 3, but that has to be verified.
Interesting. Swanton Village, again, a huge issue in Swanton now with the new public safety building, and of course Swanton Village folks hoping that the town's going to go in with them. And I think, I assume you've had some discussions too. I mean, they had maybe some hope that Highgate, towns like Highgate might jump in with them. Is that possible down the road anyway, or?
It is possible down the road.
Yeah.
We've had conversations with Earl Fournier, the select board chair for the town of Swanton.
Yeah,
And I think he's very concerned about the burden that this puts on his taxpayers as well, which I give him full respect for. I agree with him totally that there's got to be another way. There has to be a way where it's not so expensive
yeah.
for taxpayers. You can't overburden them to the point where they can't live in your town anymore.
Yeah. Anyway, so the Sheriff's Department will kind of
Yes.
retake command in the not too distant future.
Yes.
What time frame? What's best case scenario? What's your best case scenario for actually seeing construction on Cathedral Square and a new library happening, Sharon? Assuming you get positive votes on town meeting day, how soon could this thing really get going?
Well, there's a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah,
Best case scenario,
yeah,
wastewater system in '24, Cathedral Square in '25, and a library in '26.
yeah.
But as I said, there's lots of moving pieces, so we're
Yeah.
going to take it day by day, and
Yeah.
we're hoping that with great partners we can.
We're game for that schedule.
Yeah.
But town meeting day, I mean, it sounds like a hugely important town meeting day for you, especially
Yeah.
for the Cathedral Square.
Yes. And if for some reason we can't pull it off, we will try to assuage whatever concerns there are that are
Yeah.
brought up and reconcile them and try again. So we're not going to put all our eggs in one basket. We're
Yeah.
going to have a backup plan, but yeah, we're hoping that we can get people to see that this is a really great thing for Highgate.
Can you talk airport project a little bit? Again, another vote in Highgate, pretty strong vote to, of course, extend the bond issue, to extend the water and sewer lines from MVU to the Franklin County State Airport, with a lot of potential for the future. How's that big project going?
So the water and sewer for the airport, we're waiting for the Economic Development Association or administration to give us a notice to proceed. Once they and Northern Borders Regional Commission gives us a notice to proceed, then we can put the project out to bid. So we're hoping that come spring, we'll have the project contracted and ready to go.
Anything in the way of that? I mean, voters approved it, so that's
Yes,
pretty much
yeah,
set to go.
that's just a paperwork ordeal at the moment.
And that should be this year, so we should see that
Yes.
happening this year.
Yeah, we have had some concerns about the grasshopper sparrow, of course.
Right? Oh, is that right? I'm not sure I heard about that.
Yes, there is a rare bird that has made its presence known on the airport.
Really, the grasshopper sparrow.
Yes, so we are aware that that is something that needs to be mitigated as the project goes forward.
Huh.
I know V-Trans is concerned about the mitigation, but the town of Highgate is pretty certain that with the stipulations of the permit that was given, that we should all be able to expand and protect the grasshopper sparrow at the same time.
Yeah. And once the water and sewer lines were extended, again, there's proposal for, maybe 6, 7, 8 parcels, whatever, or lots for future
Correct.
industrial development, possibly.
Yeah, so we have a private developer, Jim Harrison, that
Yeah.
has 8 lots there,
8 lots.
that he's in his final Act 250 permit process. So he's going forward as well, so hopefully that'll go forward in a nice, smooth transition. And we also have a 15-lot commercial development that's going in at the old brick factory.
Oh, really?
So,
Interesting.
yeah, Tim Smith and the Franklin County Industrial Development
Oh,
have been working with that group to see what we can get for interest in those 15 lots, but yes.
interesting. Well, the brick factory, that was really going well for a while, and they just kind of ran out of the key local resource. Is that what happened, or other issues too?
I
Maybe?
think there were other issues,
Yeah.
that,
Well, they had it going pretty well for a while there.
yeah, and that building has been rehabbed
Huh.
by the current owner, and I know last time I talked to Tim, he said that there was some interest from a Canadian company that was possibly going to move in there, so we're hopeful that that will happen.
Interesting. I guess Franklin County Field Days got one last reprieve, apparently, for one more year, this year at the site by the airport.
That's what we're told,
But it
yes.
sounds like that's it. Got any other nice sites in Highgate for the Field Days folks, Sharon?
They are looking at a site
Yeah.
in Highgate. They're trying to do a land negotiation with the owner
Huh.
to see if they can come up with roughly 100 acres of sand land.
Huh.
So we'll wait and see what happens. I know they have approached the town about a $5,000 appropriation for town meeting to help cover their moving costs.
Yeah, I just read a story about that on the Messenger, I guess.
Yes, so
Interesting.
we'll see how that goes over. I know on social media it's not going over well for them, but
Is that right?
we'll see what happens at town meeting.
Interesting. Speaking of town meeting, down to about 7 minutes left, and feel free to jump into anything we haven't talked about. Any other major, sounds like you have big issues coming up at town meeting. Anything else you want to quickly mention about town meeting? Anything else out of the ordinary, or just kind of regular stuff besides what we've talked about?
Fairly regular stuff.
Yeah.
Our budget has increased, of course, mostly in the Public Works Department, but it's because of the increased costs of paving materials, sand, gravel, diesel fuel. It's unfortunate, but there's not a lot we can do about it.
Yeah.
We have full staff, so far we're doing well. The only other thing that will be unusual on our ballot is we will have a question of using paid assessors versus listers,
Oh, really?
because all of our listers are done as of town meeting day.
Huh.
So
When you say done, you mean
they are retiring,
retiring.
yes.
Huh.
So we had 3 lister positions. We were down to 2 for the last few years, and
Wow.
now those 2 are retiring.
Wow, interesting.
So
And a couple of select board seats up at town meeting?
at least 1, we're waiting to find out if there'll be 2.
Um,
So yes.
Boy, inflation, how much has that affected you? I can only assume just housing projects. I mean, it sounds like everything's going up, but is that
Yeah,
that
construction
been
costs.
a big change for you, or just
Yeah,
a big hit?
It's a very challenging, it's the most challenging environment I've ever seen
Yeah.
in terms of construction costs. And
And how long have you been involved with Cathedral Square, Cindy?
11 years. Yep, so it's something that we're concerned about, and we do our best to run a tight ship, and it's labor and materials and supply chain. It's hitting everyone, and it's definitely hitting the cost of housing construct.
Yeah, and is it harder, you run into just not having enough people? I mean, the work you're trying to get done, just having problems with that, with just not enough people, I mean, bidding for stuff? Is that a labor shortage? Does that come into play or not so much?
So far, we've been okay, knock on wood.
Yeah.
But it's something that we all have to keep looking out for. We typically go with the construction management model, and they do a lot of work on scaring up a lot of support from subs in advance of a job starting.
Yeah.
So to date, we've been okay, but knock on wood. But we have to keep constructing housing, so we're gonna have to figure out what we're gonna do
Right.
going forward.
I don't realize Highgate's a year or two down the road. How long, if you get to the point and start constructing this project, what are we talking for a time frame for actually putting up the 30-unit project in
It's
Highgate?
typically around 13 months
13
to
months.
construct this size of a project,
Yeah,
assuming that all the equipment comes on time.
yeah.
Right now, there's an issue with switchgear on the electrical side, which,
No, really?
who knew? It's like every project, it's some other nightmare, like the elevator or the switchgear.
Oh,
So we try to get a lead on the materials and the equipment that we know could be challenging, so that we won't delay, because delays cost money.
right. How many, maybe you mentioned, how many stories would the Highgate project be?
Likely three,
Probably
Yeah.
3 stories.
to use the land the most wisely,
Right.
that 2.5 acres that the town owns.
Yeah,
We want to try to build up and hide the parking underneath so that we
Yeah.
can have some green space in there and have it be a nice, aesthetically pleasing and community congregant space, like the outdoor cafe, which we hope
that'd be great.
would be great to have
Yeah.
as part of that vision.
Sharon, down to about 3 minutes. Anything else you want to jump into or elaborate on here?
It's going to be a busy construction season in 2024. We also have not only the airport and possibly the wastewater, we also have the transfer station is having a $2 million
Oh, wow.
bank stabilization project that's already contracted out and ready to start as soon as Mother Nature cooperates.
That
So-
issue came up, yeah, it's been an issue for a while. You've had problems on that front going back some years, right?
Yes, and the flooding in July
Oh.
actually caused another bank slide
Really?
that FEMA has denied. So we are actually in the
Really?
process of doing an appeal to FEMA to try to get that
Huh.
covered in some way, shape, or form.
Why did they deny that?
It's a strange thing.
Huh.
A study was done in 2016, and it was a visual study done by Geodesign, and they walked the property in the winter and said, well, this might be a possible location where it would slide, this might be a possible location. These are low priority, this is medium priority, and this is high priority. So we've taken the last 10, 15 years to get funding for the high priority areas, which is what has gone out to contract. But this low priority site that was noticed on this engineering map was the basis for FEMA denying our appeal, our request.
Right.
They're saying that the town had previous knowledge to it being a slide site, but it wasn't. It was just a visual walk-through in the snow of a piece of property that Geodesign never, yes, it was a possible, but it
Right.
wasn't a probable.
Under a minute, so another issue out there. Cindy, a few, again, sounds like you'd love to jump into Highgate and do your project in Highgate.
Yeah, it's a wonderful town with a vision. Done a lot of legwork on the planning, the master planning, what they want to see, the wastewater disposal field proposed. And the ARPA money and some of the state money has been really a great opportunity. And I think the town's really looking at using those resources to benefit the town and have as little impact as possible on taxpayers. So we're excited about working with the town of Highgate.
I guess we'll leave it on that note. Thanks very much to Sharon Bosquet, the Highgate Town Administrator, and Cindy Reid with Cathedral Square, the Director of Real Estate Development. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
You got a lot of information out. Thanks to my man, Alan Cunningham, our producer. I'm Richard Cowperthwait. We appreciate you watching us here on Northwest Access TV. See you next time.